Tonight, you tell yourself it's fine. You'll sleep later. One more episode, one more scroll, one more hour that feels free, because the bill hasn't arrived yet. But you can't see the bill because it hasn't come to you in your lifetime. Not in your daybook, not in your body. Still, it isn't free. It's borrowed, against a future you haven't lived in yet. And somewhere, sometime, someone has to go collect what's owed. Miles does that. Miles has done it for longer than he lets himself count. You don't know his name at first the way you know your own. You know his outline, tall, thin, a stick-figure posture that doesn't waste motion. He wears a long grey coat that looks heavy even when it's still. His hollow eyes don't move like eyes that search for comfort, they move like eyes that track a ledger. A brass pocket watch sits at his chest like a closed question. It never opens for you. It never has to. You can feel time around him the way you can feel a storm in your teeth. He stands where other people don't stand anymore, on street corners at hours that don't belong to anyone's calendar. And tonight, he has a mistake waiting for him. The street is the kind you forget the moment you leave it. A porch light burns with the quiet stubbornness of habit. Not because someone needs it. Because someone once did, and now the switch is muscle memory. A car sits at an angle that says whoever pulled in was tired. Not reckless, just finished with the day. Somewhere behind curtains, a family's breath rises and falls in routines they trust. You watch Miles from the edge of the driveway. He pauses at the base of it longer than you think he needs to. He doesn't look at the house like he's deciding whether to do his job. He looks at it like he's acknowledging it's real, like the walls could vanish if he doesn't respect the fact of them. Then he opens the ledger. Not with ceremony, not like a villain opening a book of doom. Like someone checking a receipt they already know the price of. Like habit, you can't see the numbers at first. You just see the way he holds the pages, carefully, as if roughness might tear something that can't be replaced. And then he reads. 41 hours. He reads it once, then again. The second time is the same motion you make when you reread a sentence that doesn't sound right. The second time isn't for confirmation. It's for refusal. He's hoping the ink will behave differently when he stares at it hard enough. 41 isn't much. Miles has held ledgers heavy enough to bend his hands. Decades of borrowed nights stacked into numbers that stop meaning anything after a certain point. So why does this one stop him at the porch? Because the name beside the number won't fit. He checks the birth date twice, slowly, carefully, like a careful mistake might still be possible. Like someone in a system run long enough by tired hands might have slipped. But there's no error. 9 years old. Miles says it quietly, to no one, the way you say a number you're hoping changes its shape once spoken. 9-year-olds don't accumulate debt like this. Not from exams. Not from glowing screens at midnight. Not from the ordinary erosion adults inflict on themselves for years, until it feels normal and they don't notice the slow leak anymore. A child's ledger like this, thick, deliberate, doesn't happen by accident. It happens because a weight was pressed onto smaller shoulders. It happens because someone older didn't want to carry it alone. You feel the air tighten around you, even in a still, quiet neighborhood. The porch light keeps glowing, indifferent to your unease. Miles moves. He lets himself in without using the door. Not through it, exactly. Not around it either. The way a draft moves through a house, present without permission. The hallway is dark. A nightlight far inside casts pale gold, enough to make furniture into suggestions rather than certainties. You follow Miles down the hall, and your suit and tie silhouette stays steady, your round head angled forward like a question mark you can't stop asking. He reaches the room at the end. A child sleeps there, one arm thrown over the edge of the bed, fingers curled like they're holding onto nothing. Breathing slow, breathing even, the kind of stillness that belongs to someone who doesn't know the plot twist coming in their direction tonight. Miles stands longer than the job requires. You can see it, he flinches without moving. He doesn't step forward right away. He lets his eyes settle on the child's face, on the peaceful ignorance of a person who has never been asked to consent to debt. This part, this looking, never feels like something he's allowed to do without paying for it later. He sits down on the edge of a small desk across from the bed and opens the file properly, not just the summary. 3 years of transfers, small ones, an hour here, 90 minutes there, always logged under the child's name, never under the true source. The pattern is so patient it takes a professional this long to notice it was a pattern at all. Whoever did it didn't do it like cruelty. Miles is sure of that in the specific way he's sure of very little else. Not meaning harm, and doing none, those are two different things. Somewhere in this house, someone is about to learn which one they actually did. You watch Miles' hand turn the pages. You watch him stop on entries that stack into a storyline the child never wrote. Then the second ledger sits beneath the first, like a secret second roof under a house nobody thinks to inspect. It belongs to the mother. Single parent, 2 jobs, 3 years of nights hunched over kitchen bills, doing the grinding math that keeps a house standing 1 month at a time. Every hour should have shown up on her own ledger. Instead, invisibly, quietly, without her meaning to, it was logged somewhere else. Under a child's name. In a column that doesn't get to say no. Miles has a theory about people like her. They don't think of it as taking. They think of it as protecting. The way you throw yourself in front of something without stopping to calculate the cost, because calculating is the part that would stop you. He doesn't wait for her to appear. He doesn't need to. He finds her exactly where the ledger told him he would. Not in her bed. Not hiding in sleep. At the kitchen table, head resting on one folded arm, bills fanned out like cards no one wants to play. A mug of coffee sits cold within reach, still close enough to prove she reached for warmth and never got it. Her exhaustion is familiar in the way a bruise is familiar. You can see it without touching it. Miles has seen parents do this before, bleeding their own hours into a child's account and believing it's a private debt, one only they will ever have to answer for. But rules exist, even for good intentions. And collecting them the way the ledger says to collect, means taking years from a 9-year-old for choices they never made. It also means taking years from a child who cannot refuse, cannot bargain, cannot understand what's being traded away while the night is still quiet. This is where Miles has a clause. In his work, discretion exists as a narrow door. Rarely invoked. A collector can reassign a debt to its true origin, if he's willing to personally answer for the difference later, whenever later arrives. He's used it exactly twice in decades. Both times, it cost him more than the hours themselves ever could. There's a version of him that never touches the clause. A version that takes exactly what the ledger says, follows the rulebook like it's holy, and sleeps with the calm of permission granted in advance. Miles used to believe he'd become that version. He hasn't. Not yet. You can feel him struggling with the choice without him making a dramatic show of it. Nothing in the room shifts except the ledger's pages and the tiny weight in his shoulders. Reassigning it means she wakes tomorrow having aged slightly more than she should have, paid in something her body never agreed to on paper. A cost she didn't explicitly sign for, but arguably always understood she was risking. Like anyone who quietly gives too much understands there's a price lurking underneath, even if they train themselves not to look at it directly. Leaving it means the boy grows slowly into a man with a debt dragging behind him, hours he never spent and will never remember choosing to spend. There is no version of tonight where nobody pays. Miles has learned that with total certainty, if nothing else. So he does what he can do. Not the easiest action. Not the action that keeps him clean. The action that keeps the child from becoming an unwilling accountant of pain. 41 hours move. Quietly. Invisibly. Back to where they were always supposed to sit. You don't hear a crash. No supernatural thunder. No bright beam of justice. The child's ledger clears completely, like a stain removed from paper you didn't know was marked. A small, quiet kind of relief nobody in that house will ever consciously notice. The child will simply grow up a little more rested than he otherwise would have been. Without ever knowing there was a version of his own life where that wasn't true. Miles exhales like someone who just set down something fragile he's been carrying too long. It isn't mercy, not exactly. It's closer to justice wearing plain clothes. Somewhere, long ago, a rule like this was written by someone who understood that kindness and justice don't always point in the same direction. Sometimes you have to make him meet. When he finishes, he lets himself out as the sky begins to lighten at the edges. A grey that shows up right around the time he finishes something difficult. As if morning itself learned to arrive on schedule for the nights that break him. He doesn't feel good about tonight, not in the way you might mean it. He doesn't feel rewarded. He feels like he did the only defensible thing available, like, in this specific job, that's the closest thing to good he's ever likely to get. The mother will wake tomorrow more tired than she expects. She'll blame the 2 jobs, the bills, the ordinary grinding exhaustion of raising a child alone. She'll be right. Not entirely. She'll never know exactly how right she happened to be. You follow Miles away from the house, staying with him as he sits on a bench at the edge of the street. He watches the sky finish what it started, that slow bleed from dark to lighter dark. He thinks about nothing in particular and everything at once, the way you do after a long night that asked more of you than you were ready to give. 30-some years in this job, and it's never the dramatic collections that stay with him afterward. It's the quiet ones, the ones where someone almost paid for a debt that was never theirs to carry, where no one, not even them, would ever have known the difference. He thinks, sometimes, late like this, about his own ledger. Collectors aren't supposed to look at their own files. It's against the rules in the way so many things are against the rules, technically. Until someone decides, quietly, that the rule doesn't apply to them tonight. Miles hasn't looked in years. He isn't sure he wants to know exactly how many hours is moved onto himself without writing it down, without calling it what it actually is. Maybe that's the real reason he keeps doing this. Not the pay, not even the purpose. Just the specific relief of fixing someone else's ledger when he hasn't found the nerve required to open his own. Because somewhere, right now, tonight, another child is asleep, quietly carrying hours that were never theirs to carry. Miles won't find that ledger tonight. He'll find it eventually. He always does. That's the part nobody warns you about when a job like this starts to feel routine. It never actually ends. There's always another street, another porch light left on out of habit, another name attached to a number that refuses to add up. You feel a familiar tightening in your chest, because you realize this job isn't only something Miles does. It's something time does. Borrowed hours pile up behind every decision that says, later, like it's harmless. The bill waits even when you don't see it. Miles stands again, coat settling, brass watch quiet against his chest. Quiet, unthanked, necessary, whether anyone ever learns it or not.